order of business is agenda approval, and there has been a request to move policy 713, transportation, from the action section to the discussion section due to wanting to review it more with the board. So with that change, do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's board meeting? Man moved. Is there a second? Action section to the discussion section due to wanting to review it more with the board. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Tonight's agenda is approved. Before we move on in the agenda, I want to take a moment to recognize that this is the first time that the board has had a full board meeting since the tragedy that took place at Annunciation School on August 27th. The board wants to express our deepest condolences and our strongest support for our neighbors who have been impacted by this horrific event. We know how interconnected our communities are. We have former Annunciation students who now attend our schools. We play on sports teams together. We sing in choirs together. And you are our neighbors and our friends. Edina stands with you during this terribly difficult time, and we are here to support you today, tomorrow, and moving forward. All right, moving on. We are going to move on to this month's Excellence in Action. And this month features cabinet members sharing about their back-to-school planning.
Great, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just want to take a couple quick moments. One, to introduce a new employee to us, Francisca Standstrong, our American Indian Education Coordinator. Let's give her a warm welcome. We're so happy that you're here, and we know that your family's here. Some of your family's here with us tonight, too, so thank you so much. Well, you don't have to stay with us the whole night. We know this is your time, but we just wanted to put your face in front of the board, and we're grateful to serve with you. We're so happy that you're here, and we know that your family's here. I'd also like to take a moment here just at the beginning to recognize our school board members. So as you might remember, this is School Board Recognition Month, and a lot of work goes on behind the scenes to make sure that the magic happens, that 10,000 students come to school, that they have an amazing opportunity through our quality programs and our extracurricular activities. And we have a number of folks here that are interested in recognizing you tonight. And so we're going to ask that you just come up to the front. We have a little certificate for each of you when we call your name. We'll smile for the camera. Miss Daphne is going to take a picture of each of us, and then we're going to take one group picture. But on behalf of the cabinet, on behalf of the school district and our entire team, thank you so much for what you do. Let's give them a round of applause. So when we call your name, we're going to have you come around to the front, and we're going to hand out a nice certificate. I think there are some folks in the audience who might want to join us for that. So we'll start with Board Chair Karen Gabler. Come on down.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Vice Chair Erica Allenberg, come on in. So Erica is especially important to our team tonight because she was the longest standing member who was the former board chair. So there's a special recognition.
So important, no one from my family's here.
Oh,
Do you want to borrow a Gabler kid? Just
we can only do so much with all the activities that our families are involved with. So again, just on behalf of the school district and our entire team.
Thank you. Thank you and my new family right here.
Here we go, Mr. Dan Arrow. Cheryl Berry. We're so proud to have you and your family part of our team, and we're just grateful that they could be here tonight for part of your recognition. Thank you. Come on up. Let's get a picture.
Thank you so much.
There's something. Make sure
So this guy's
We didn't blow the surprise.
Thank you for that.
You showed up.
We are grateful. You're both here, and just so grateful to have Jen part of our team. So thank you very much.
Woo. Great, thank you. They're being branded.
Elliot Mann, come on up.
Paying for this one later.
So appreciative, and even matching shirts, that's pretty cool. We're so
Broken
proud.
clock is right twice a day.
We're so proud to have your dad part of our team. So thank you very much.
I will. Do you want me to? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Michael Berman, come on.
Woo! Hey, Michael.
This is like the price is right.
Thank you. It's a busy time with families. I know that they had a big event tonight, and so.
That's what they told you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not even sure how to
I
read
guess
that.
honestly, it's not very good in my family. I'm so sorry to say.
We are so grateful for you being part of it, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
I got it, no? So again, on behalf of IC 273, Edina, I'm looking at his shirt right now, making sure he's with us here. Just so grateful that you are all here and for the work that you do, and I hope that you feel that this is just a little bit of a token to let you know how much we appreciate you. So families, thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to continuing to keep your families busy and productive. So thank you. Have a good night. We do have
Marcella, you have to
coming up.
stay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, families, for coming. That
Thank
was
you.
quite the surprise. So, all right,
Thanks.
I guess we still have the cabinet coming up for Excellence in Action to talk to us about their back-to-school planning. So we'll welcome them up.
That sounds great. Come on up. So Madam Chair, members of the board, it was our pleasure to just open up our schools to our 10,000 students and families and community. We have so much to be proud of, but what we asked our cabinet members to do is to just give 2 or 3 highlights of back to school of things we may want to know, being the work that we do throughout our buildings. And so with that, we will turn it over to Franny to start us off.
So things I'll move it that way. So, so things I worked on highlights. Worked on a lot of things, but things I worked on, I took the two parts of my job name, so achievement equity, multilingual learner programming. So with multilingual learner programming, I met with all secondary EL teachers and a partner teacher. So oftentimes our EL students will go into a partner teacher's class for ELA or math or science. So I met with all of those teachers and provided some professional development during opening week. And we are really excited at the elementary level that with Benchmark coming in, not only does Benchmark have a curriculum in Spanish, it also has a curriculum just for English language learners that supports the English curriculum that is happening in the classroom. And then I always get the joy of leading culturally proficient school systems, facilitating those trainings. And I facilitated training for new teachers, and I got to facilitate training for community education. And probably one of my favorite facilitations that I've gotten to do in the last 2 years was I got to facilitate a half-day training for all the paraprofessionals in the district. And that was just an absolutely amazing time with the paraprofessionals.
Okay, good evening. So I want to start by saying this is work that my teaching and learning department did, and I did in collaboration with them. So the two main highlights are we welcome back new staff with intentional and targeted professional development. As you know, we worked with not only the whole entire teaching and learning team, but all the people behind me and many, many other people in order to welcome new teachers to Edina and make sure that they were supported and felt a sense of belonging right from the start. We had 51 in our new teacher training this year. And then on August 20th, we had our kickoff day as well as our PD afternoon session, very targeted PD around new resources that are coming in or just time for our secondary staff to vertically plan and align with each other and be in a good place to kick off the school year. And then as we hear a lot about, we're still deeply engaged in the READ Act and the science of reading training, specifically letters. So this year we have 3 cohorts still going strong in letters. And so it's interesting as that gets smaller, it's getting a little bit more complicated because some teachers are coming to us with half of it done or all of it done and just navigating that. The other thing that my teaching and learning team did in collaboration with me and many, many, many other people, I do want to give a huge shout out to DMTS with this area, is really ensuring resource purchases and allocations were ready for teachers. So we know when kids come to the teachers in the classrooms, we want them prepared in whatever way that means. And I have to say, the longer I've been in this position, the more I realize how behind the scene, the depth of the behind the scenes work that happens there. So just some highlights of curriculum that has been purchased, and the process is long and it's important. So ELA, secondary and elementary resources, and then social studies, secondary resources, and then some elementary, smaller amount of implementation. But if I look at our list of the things that have been purchased, it's
many balls into my pants as she could in a period of time. And I lost, Jody and I, we lost against Dr. Bittman and Mert. Dr. Bittman caught many more balls into his pants than I could catch in mine. So I'm gonna just say that was probably Jody's tossing, but it started off in that way. And I lost, Jody and I. We also have just really worked with a lot of different departments. And so Daphne talked about capturing the joy and kind of talking to staff. I spent a lot of time traveling around to different buildings, talking to staff, asking them what the highlight of their summer was. And one of the things that was really great for me is that I haven't seen staff so excited and happy and healthy since prior to the pandemic. And so seeing that and engaging with staff in that way was really great. We also were able to select some READ Act trainers for our paraprofessionals so that we can be in full compliance with the READ Act, making sure that all paraprofessionals who work on reading instruction also have that training. I've spent some time meeting with the district behavior team. We have new behavior analysts that are starting this year, and so onboarding them. We've launched a project to eliminate our disproportionate suspension rates that we have for our Black African American students with disabilities. So really framing what that project will look like and getting started with training around how we capture that data so that we can really make meaning and better understand our practices. And then we had the first meeting of our Safe Body Boundary Committee. It probably sounds like I need that after the first thing that we started with over at Southview, but really working on that so that we can be able to provide direction to our buildings and things like that so that we can help students how to keep their bodies safe. So that's how we started out. It probably sounds like I need that after the first thing that we started with over at Southview.
Good evening. So we have kind of a standing joke with a wink in human resources because people like to say to us, hey, do you work in the summer? And we always laugh about this a little bit because actually, since we turned this in last week, we have now onboarded 212 new employees since June in our school district. And so what that means, of course, is we have posted for those positions. We have collected all the paperwork for those positions. We have onboarded, which means we invite every single new employee in our school district in to meet with us. Whether you are a coach, whether you are working in our Kids Club program, whether you're one of our teachers, whether you're a principal, every level of the organization, we invite you in and we spend time with you. And that we spend that time because we want to ensure you're welcomed. We want to ensure that your questions are answered. We go through all of the benefits that you're provided in addition to all that fascinating payroll paperwork and all of those things. But we also spend a good amount of time with every employee going through their insurance benefits and the options that they have. That's a really important piece to us because we know that that feeling of belonging, that feeling of being welcomed is really important to someone, their initial perception of an organization and whether or not they're going to stick with that organization long term. In addition to onboarding for a new school year, we also are responsible for a lot of the mandatory training that goes on throughout the school district. And we use, for most of that, an online training program that's used by many school districts in the state called Safe Schools, put out by Vector Solutions. And so we have, since August, actually sent out training assignments to 1,727 employees, 9,012 actual training assignments, and those, so every employee in our school district this year was assigned bullying recognition and response training to train employees on what to look for between students in bullying situations and how they should respond. Child abuse and mandatory reporting, of course, which we provide every year, and then standard response protocols to ensure safe conditions within our schools. In addition, there are certain positions in the school district that also have to have some additional training, such as the highly popular blood-borne pathogens exposure training, which many of our, of course, our custodial staff, our science teachers, our health services staff, our art teachers, and then hearing conservation for our music band, and then also some different OSHA trainings as well. So that's how we have started our year.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. Dr. Bittman talked about making the magic happen. Director Edwards talked about capturing the magic, and I'm here to tell you the magic doesn't happen on its own. And I just want to give a shout out to our principals and building leaders. I've had the good fortune to spend quite a bit of time with them in preparation for this school year. And they have just done a marvelous job of preparing for the school year, getting our schools ready, getting teachers supported and prepped for everything that comes their way. So I just want to give a shout out to our principals. They're doing a fabulous job. The second thing that during this time of the year that I spend a lot of my time doing is being out at sites and checking in with teachers, checking in with building leaders. And there's just so, I know that we started the board meeting with the sobering recognition of the tragedy that happened. And I'm here to also tell you that there's a lot of happiness in our schools right now too. And people are in a good place. And so I'm very appreciative of our staff. During the first day of school, I got to participate at many different sites, and I got to see the transition program that Southview and Valley View both do, called Where Everybody Belongs, or WEB. And that brought back memories, because like 25 years ago, I was doing that at a school that I was at. And so it brought back really great memories. And then I have been paying particular attention to Countryside and just making sure that everything is going well there. And I am just here to report, I think our buildings are in really good shape. So thank you.
Good evening. Having safe, temperature-controlled, and clean buildings is a critical component of having and delivering an excellent education. So our buildings and ground staff spent a lot of time this summer cleaning almost every nook and cranny of our 1.853 million square feet that we have in our facilities, particularly after a really hard use this summer by our community education programming and all that they deliver. We also spent a lot of time walking through the various schools that have significant construction, particularly the high school and Cornelia Elementary, who's getting a restroom renovation that's about 60 years in the making. And so making sure that those projects are being completed on time and up to specification was something we spent a lot of time on. Back to school for students also means back to school for more than 70 bus drivers. And so training and retraining our school bus drivers on transportation safety and all the responsibilities that they have to safely transport our students to and from school is something we spent a lot of time doing. Also adjusting all their various routes to accommodate the pretty robust construction that's occurring, particularly around the Highway 100 areas. We're still not exactly where we want to be in terms of route times, but overall I think things are going pretty well, and we'll continue to fine tune as the school year progresses.
Madam Chair, members of the board, just a quick shout out to our cabinet for the leadership they're providing. I know you know this, but the tireless efforts, morning, night, weekends, et cetera, to make sure that that's a good experience for our families is humbling. So I'm just so grateful to work with this team, and I continue to learn with and from them each day. So thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet team. All right, we are moving on to hearing from members of the public, and we have someone here this evening to speak to us. So I will just reiterate that when you signed in and asked to speak, you acknowledged an understanding and adherence to Board Policy 206, which are community comment guidelines. Pursuant to this policy, each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. A clock on the screen will be a visual reminder of your time remaining, and I will prompt you verbally if you are going over the 3 minutes. When those 3 minutes are up, you must conclude your remarks. Finally, during public comment period, our role as the board is to listen, but this is not the place for the board to resolve any concerns, and as such, no comments will be made from the board. Issues will potentially be referred to the superintendent for appropriate follow-up. So now I welcome up Mr. Ralph Zickert to speak to the board. Welcome, Mr. Zickert.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Dr. Bittman, board members. First, I have great respect for Edina School District and its teachers. Edina Public Schools have made an incredibly positive impact on my family. Mary Jane Houlihan and Bill Hebb, both retired, deserve a special shout out. I can't say thank you enough. Second, I applaud this board and Mr. Woodard for their foresight and courage to look for outside help and ask the community for direct involvement with the budget reduction, reallocation, revenue generation process. It was a credit to your transparency, community engagement, and willingness to confront the brutal facts. With that said, my main purpose tonight is to call your attention to an issue that will come before you between now and December 31st. In the coming months, you'll be asked to extend the duration of 2 tax increment financing districts by an additional 5 years. Per state statute, the school board's approval is needed, and when it comes before you, I urge you to vote no. Reject the City Council's August 19th resolutions of 2025-69 and 2025-70, copies of which have been provided to Ms. Nas. City staff portrays that there are no adverse impact to Edina schools through the creation of a TIF district. Yet, for the next 20 years, the net tax capacity, a term I hope you're familiar with, will be frozen. City Council and staff contend state funding will make up for those 20 years. If only that were so. As the school board is only too well aware, state funding has lagged both the classroom needs and inflationary pressures funding that shortfall. A shortfall that now stands at $1,350 per student and some $12 million annually. The council would have you believe it's just a small of an amount of this for this TIF district. I'm guessing state legislators had much the same thing to say in 2003. Finally, please do not be distracted by the small number of affordable housing units proposed by these TIF districts. All the affordable housing units have a sunset clause, and after 15 years, the developer can raise their rents to market rate. On top of which, each TIF district has proposed tens of millions of dollars, ill-spent taxpayer dollars, $20 million for a parking garage to support an unbuilt commercial office building, and another $31 million for a pedestrian tunnel under France, while school revenue remains frozen. All of which constitute good reasons to vote no, and do not extend the TIF districts associated with the 7200 and 7235 France Avenue, the old U.S. Bank site and Macy's site, respectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zucker. We appreciate it. All right, board, we will be moving on to the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, then do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Aram moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Birdman second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. Moving on to discussion items for this evening. Our first item is the Concord Flood Risk Reduction Infrastructure Project. And I welcome to the dais Mert Woodard, Director of Finance and Operation, and a special guest, Ross Bittner, Engineering Services Manager for the City of Edina. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school board. I'm Director Birdman, Superintendent Bittman. Thank you for taking an opportunity to listen and hear a report about the Concord Flood Risk Reduction Project. This item was initially introduced to members of the board through the superintendent's weekly updates. I believe that took place about a month ago. At last month's Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, this topic also came up. Really grateful to have Ross here from the city to help kind of bring all the school board members and members of the public up to speed. Before I turn it over to him to speak maybe more to the technical aspects of the project, I'll just provide a little bit of context for those who haven't been following closely. During the spring of 2025, the school board approved a project that's taking place at the Edina Community Center, rehabilitating the tennis courts. That project involves removing the lower tennis courts and bringing them up to join the existing tennis courts that were higher up, providing what we think is a better amenity for our tennis teams and users of the space. During that project's design, we also designed stormwater management facilities as a portion of pervious surface was being removed on the site. And whenever that happens, typically there are requirements to produce stormwater facilities so that we don't create additional floodplains. When we approached the city for a permit for that project, we discovered that there was a more robust stormwater reduction facility in the works on their side. And as a result, we did not move forward with constructing our own. That actually provided an immediate savings and change order to the project you approved of about $256,000. At this point, the school board and the city must enter an agreement if we are to construct that more robust facility between the Concord Playground and Southview parking lot, which is why we are here before you today. Before we have to move towards that agreement, we likely will have a review period by our own attorneys to make sure that we are meeting all of the school board's requirements, meeting all the city's requirements. There's also the potential for future savings with what we like to call stormwater management credits. I think that's what they're referred to. If we do have projects within the Minnehaha Watershed Creek District in the future that would otherwise require stormwater management facilities, this more large, robust facility may actually provide more accommodation than required, thus reducing project costs on future projects. Without further ado, Mr. Ross Bittner.
Thanks, Director Woodard. I think you've got a lot of good information in your packet, and Director Woodard gave you a really good outline of kind of the potential efficiencies we saw through our Concord Flood Infrastructure Project and then the required treatments for the tennis court system. So I learned about the tennis court system when it came into my office for a permit. We want to make sure that the building that's being done in the watershed isn't causing downstream flooding to neighborhoods or to people. But here we actually realized that we had overlapping needs to that facility that you would have invested in. So that's when we made the connection here. When I kind of put it up through the chain of command in the city of Edina, they really thought it was a no-brainer. It's about, spending the public dollar once and for the most good, rather than piecemeal and at different times. But it does get this body involved in a decision-making process about land and community spaces that you may not typically be involved in. So I put together the information about flooding in Edina with a lot of good links in that PDF so that you can kind of explore a little bit more and help others explore when you hear, because the work that we do is impactful to the community. These are construction projects that sometimes go on for 3 to 8 months. They can take the fields that are in place out of service for 2 full seasons. So there's real trade-offs that happen. But on the end of that construction project, we end up with a system that does a lot better for flood risk reduction and for clean water purposes for our natural environment. It can also remake and reform the spaces that we work in. So I've given you a couple of examples throughout the community. As I've been at the City of Edina for 13 years, it gets easier and easier to sell these projects and to really bring the vision to bodies like you and the community in general, because I can tell you to just go look at the Linmar Basin or go look at the Morningside Flood Infrastructure Project or the creek restoration at Arden Park or the next project or the next project. So our resume really is on the landscape. We have a holistic process where we engage the community. We are proposing to lead that engagement with whatever interests or concerns you have in mind, kind of baked into the agreement to use the land and the space. But I just wanted to start that conversation here and make sure that we really took this board's pulse so that we understood how to make this project the best one it can be.
Before we turn it over to board members for questions, Mr. Bittner did remark on fields perhaps being down for 1 or 2 seasons. I did pull permit information, and over the last 5 years, about 207 different permits were issued for use of the ball field and the other grounds that are there. About 3,800 hours of use. 26% of that was used by the Edina High School track and field teams. Another 26% for community education programming. And the third highest user was the Edina Baseball Association at just under 10%. No other group yielded more than 6% use. So we have 3 pretty significant users, and those groups would have to be accommodated during the potential project phase.
Board members, what questions do you have for Mr. Bittner or Director Woodard? Director Ellenberg.
Hello, thank you for bringing this, and thank you, Director Woodard, for this. I have a couple of questions about this. One is, I don't know if you could explain the, it sounds like a great use of funds, but could you explain to me the difference in variability in the land use? Because we had a plan for stormwater sewage. I assume that plan wasn't for the entire Concord neighborhood. So can you explain the impact to the actual land for our district?
I can do my best. We don't call them council members here. Commission members? No. Board member Ellenberg.
Erica, whatever.
Thank you. I'm a stranger in a strange land. So when we do permitting for new or redeveloped impervious surfaces, and this is a broad we because it's mostly the watershed district or the Minnehaha Creek watershed district in this case, the rules are typically do no harm. So you're going to build more spaces that are impervious, and you're going to create some sort of a facility to help mitigate for the potential damage that additional impervious might create for those downstream pieces. When we do flood infrastructure projects, we're looking to try to turn back the clock a little bit and actually do a net benefit for the environment and for flood risk reduction. So I think the scope is a little different, but the strategies that we might use are the same. So the facility that this displaces would have been an underground pipe system where the water from the tennis courts would have gone underground and then maybe slowly trickled into the groundwater, or if it got a big storm, it would meter off in a slower rate than it would before. We're looking at some of the same facilities. It could be bioretention and a beautiful rain garden out in the unused space. It could be large underground chamber systems so that we don't sacrifice any of the use of the fields. And then when the really big storm comes, it could be on-field flood storage.
Okay, I think I would like to make sure that I really understand, like, for the District of Edina and our land use, how, if at all, would this impact the actual land use, and not just thinking of the implementation, but if I understand the contract correctly, we as a district are giving up some control in that for the upkeep, we have to let the city maintain this. And so I just want to make sure that as a district, however we want to use our land, we're able to use it, and we can are not restricting ourselves in the future in any way. And so those are my two primary concerns. And so I guess I would probably ask those to our legal counsel when they review it, is land use, not just as it's implemented, or I apologize, I don't know the correct term for flood mitigation. And then on an ongoing basis, are we restricting ourselves in any way, not just for use, but maybe in 50 years if they wanted to sell part of that? So those are my two questions/concerns.
Yeah, I think I could answer that right now. It definitely encumbers the site. So if you had plans to put a building in that low area, that might not be technically feasible, or it might be ruinously expensive based on the law. But say you had a dream to do that. I think we'd want to know now if you had some of those wishes or wants for that future space, because going forward with this agreement would encumber that space and mean that to go from a field and flood infrastructure to something else in the future would be much more expensive.
And I'm going to add on to that because that was one of my comments. I think my big takeaway, and we saw this in finance and facility, is that one of the school district's most limiting factors is space and land. And so my biggest concern is giving up the use of a parcel of land that we may at some point need. And I think that's what I hear Director Allenberg talking about as well, is just making sure that even once it's completed, if it limits our usage into the future, I think we just have to, as board members, with our due diligence, make sure that we're not boxing the district in, and 15 years later, board members are saying, why did they do that? So I would love to make sure we're good partners with the city and we're having that conversation, but from step one, that's been a little bit of my hesitation, is just understanding if this backs us into a corner.
Which was a little bit about my question, is like, what is the sort of like the percent change if we had to do flood mitigation anyway with the tennis courts, and we were going to probably have limitations to the land maybe? Does this change it by that's what I'm trying to understand. So it's that change that I'm trying to understand.
I think it's important to also note, and this is what would be very helpful from the city in our discussions and potential proposals. To that question, what could we do on that land as it is today if we actually did the water mitigation, which we would have had to do for the permit process which we already had for the tennis courts? We were going to have to do something anyway. It just is not as big as what the city is coming to asking us for. The question then becomes, if we didn't agree with the city to do this, what is the actual use of that land that we could actually do something with? Is it just amount of money? We could do whatever we want, it's just gonna cost a lot of money to be able to mitigate something. Or through the permitting process with the city, which has its limits, what could we actually do with that to then get to your answer of what are we then giving up if we do that? That would be critically important to understand. And I think it's very important, as it was discussed in our finance committee, but I'll now say it to you since you're the representative from the city, and to our wonderful colleagues that we all know. The land use for the district is already so limited. This and one other space that we have is all that we have in the district, and our needs are evolving. We're looking at our strategic plans for the next 10, 15, 20 years in different things. We're gonna need a lot more discussion and understanding of what that is, I think, to be able to consider to move forward. It's not because the plan that you've put on the table is something that's I'm not supportive of. Makes a lot of sense to me, in having the neighborhood have better flood mitigation is we're all neighbors, so we all care about that. But the trade-offs is really, really important, and we need to make sure we have a clear understanding of that. And the second part that came out of the finance committee was getting this field area back into a state that's either the same or better than what it is now. You know, where do we go into the process of, okay, if we then need to do maintenance on the field itself, but your infrastructure is kind of part of that, then what are the reasonable expectations of what the needs are of the district for something versus what the interests and needs are of the infrastructure for the city to maintain? That's a critical, because again, to Chair Gaylor's point, we really have to be able to understand, not any of us are gonna face this, not even necessarily anyone in the cabinet's gonna face it. You might not even face this no matter how long you decide to stay with the city, but for a generation from now, we need to make sure we're very clear about that. So I'm regurgitating a little bit of what Chair Gabler said, but I can tell you this is what in the finance committee was not only the members of the board and the administration, but we also had our community members who are also a part of that committee. This is where we were not against it, not negative about it, but concerns as to we have a lot more questions and interests that we need to figure out. And I'm not sure we could fully cover those tonight, because I think there's a lot of questions that need to go in more detail. But I think that's the track I would want you to go back to the city with and talk to City Manager Neal and the council and so on and so forth as to how do we go forward from there. And the other thing I would recommend too is that we have a standing kind of committee between the leaders of the city and the leadership of the district. This is a great topic to bring to bear in that committee to discuss this going forward, which might be out of your purview, but something you might want to take back to them as well. Thank you.
Director Mann, do you have any questions?
Nothing really to add. I guess I would just to echo what has already been said, I'd love to know what the zoning uses are for that.
as a district, it would, I think, behoove us to understand, you know, we talk about what that might be someday. What are our possible uses for that spot? I mean, right now, it's pretty swampy, to be perfectly honest, so you'd have to have mitigation regardless of what you're doing. But if we're gonna have those conversations to know what we want, what do we expect from that site, but then also what it's zoned for, I think would be really important questions to know. But otherwise, on its face, it's a great idea. It's, attending those flood issues are important, but yeah, I guess just having some more info would be great.
Mr. Truby?
Just one question. Does the permitting process continue on while this is being discussed, or does it stop and is it on hold until we decide something?
That is a great question. I believe now we have something of a variance as we discuss with the city as to what our next steps are moving forward. If we are not going to be moving forward together on this project, the district has an obligation to construct stormwater facilities for the tennis courts within 24 months.
I have just one more kind of comment. First of all, Mr. Rittner, you are correct. So I live in Morningside, so I have seen the city's process for how you handled, what are we calling it, Linmar?
That one's Morningside Flood Infrastructure Project?
Yes, so we had Weber Park, and
Yep,
then we
Weber
had that
Park.
other area. So I know that the city does a nice job of engaging stakeholders and making sure that people have a say in that. You know, I think the board has kind of reiterated some of our questions about that. I think one of the other questions that I had, or at least things that I want to be mindful of, is if this is a 2-year process, and I know we're trying to mitigate flood risk for the entire city, and I talked about a pipe. If roads are going to need to be disrupted in this process, just as you heard Director Woodard say in his kickoff, busing is a big part of our work, and traffic. I don't know if you've ever spent any time around one of our schools at pickup or drop-off. It's a nightmare. So if
I think she meant to say every school,
Right.
not some of them. Every school.
So if this moves forward, if you can personally make sure, yes, thank you, that traffic flow is like front and center and communicated and working with us about that. That is our biggest landmass campus. We have 4 different schools there, and that will be a really important part of this, so.
I had one follow-up because I might have misunderstood something that you said. So with this particular project, as it's generally proposed, we would be creating a positive effect in terms of not just meeting the minimum, but we might go past that point from what we were originally needing to do for our land. By doing this project, we would basically almost get in the plus column of benefit. Did you say that if we did that, does that mean that if we were going to go do something else somewhere else with a permitting process that had some, with the impermeable space that was going to be sort of
The credits.
a credit? Yes, thank you. That's what I was looking for. I just want to I don't need it tonight, but that would be something I'd like to understand a little bit more, because when I think about the only other space that we actually have is the northern part of the high school, which is also runs up against the district, the water district, and so on and so forth. That again, I'm more interested in knowing what our options are related to those types of things, and would this credit have any ability to be applied to some other project that we have within our land use?
Mr. Bittner can correct me if I'm wrong. Howard, the high school, I know Creek Valley's also got a little bit of space there that can potentially be built on as part of the 9 Mile Creek Watershed
Right.
District, and I don't believe the credits can necessarily transfer between different watershed
Right.
districts.
Yeah, so, and I kind of knew that, but this is why I wanted to ask that question, to get that answer, is that, again, going back to that reemphasis of our limited ability to use the land that we have because of all these factors. That's why I think you're going to get a lot of attention as to what happens with all of this and what our choices are around that, because it's so limited. And the reality is the city has limited opportunities too, in terms of its property, given that it just finally made a decision on the Grandview project related to their last piece of available land. We're both married to that same problem. Thank you.
Okay, so gentlemen, what I have heard this evening is that the board is open to continuing this conversation. We have some misgivings about the usage and knowing that we have limited land. Are there questions that you have for us or further information that we can provide you with this evening to help with next steps?
No, I think you did a great job of articulating your concerns, and we'll try to get back to you with some answers as best as we can.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being here this evening. I hope you got a cupcake.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Ross. We'll touch base.
Appreciate it.
We are moving on then to talk about our preliminary certification of property taxes payable in 2026. And Director of Finance and Operation, Mert Witter, is here to talk us through that.
Thank you, Chair Gabler, and thank you for allowing me to present on our preliminary property taxes in 2026, which will fund a portion of our fiscal year 2027 operations. Typically, when I bring forth this item for discussion at the board table, I would have significantly more information to give to you. Unfortunately, at this point in the calendar, the Department of Education has not been able to produce fully accurate data for us to present, and rather than present inaccurate data and have to revise that at a later date, I'm simply going to review kind of our levy process, some of the most important variables that go into the process, information that we know about our major levy categories, and then some next steps. I'm having some difficulty advancing the slides. There we go. So again, those are the topics that we will be discussing tonight. In terms of the preliminary levy process, really there's a lot of data that is transmitted to the Department of Education, and that's coming from 3 different parties. The district administration, the Department of Education itself, and also Hennepin County has a part to play in this. In terms of the district administration, the most important piece of information that we're providing to the Department of Education is regarding enrollment data, which we'll touch on a later slide. We're also providing them information about items such as our other post-employment benefits and severance payments that are eligible to be reimbursed through property taxes, some of our community education levy programs, and those are some of the major items that we're transmitting to the Department of Ed. The Department of Ed is collecting updated revenue formulas, particularly during years that follow a legislative session. So they're updating all of their systems to capture the newest per pupil enrollment information. They're capturing updated consumer price index information, particularly for districts that have an operating referendum that's tied to inflation. So all those figures are being updated. The county is transmitting new assessed market values because those are important components that are part of the levy process. In fact, they are directly tied to one of our property tax levy categories, which we'll touch on at a later date. All of that information is collected into something called the Levy Limitation and Certification Report. It's a 39-page report that contains every single levy category and formula. It shows you how it's derived from start to finish, and then summarized on the following pages. That report, as mentioned, is not currently available, so we'll provide you with the best information that we have at our September 22nd, I believe, work session. We're hoping to be able to provide you a fully accurate report so that you can understand how our levy is going to be changing. I can tell you now that we're looking like it's going to be a less than 5% change, which is in line with kind of the average change that we've seen over the last 10 years, and also lower than 2 years ago, and also lower than last year, which is I think something that we can celebrate for our taxpayers. We'd like to have enough money so that we can operate adequately, but also respect all of our property owners within the district. If the board acts on that in September, typically we'll recommend that you levy the maximum. When you do that, you can also under levy in December if you choose to do so. However, if you don't levy the maximum in September, you cannot increase your levy for that Truth in Taxation meeting in December. Should the school board approve that in September, we'll transmit that information to the department and also the Hennepin County Auditor's Office. They will then begin to produce parcel-specific notices. So every property owner in the district, sometime in November, will receive a sample property tax notice that describes both the school district's taxes, the county's taxes, the city's taxes, and also any special districts such as watersheds, et cetera. So that's sort of the process that's going to be followed. The most important variable in all this, as you all very well know, is enrollment. enrollment is responsible in some way for about 85% of our operating revenues. So typically there's a per pupil amount, which is multiplied by your enrollment. So it's something that the district's very sensitive to and something that we pay very close attention to. And the school district last school year, so 24-25, ended with average daily membership of 8,711 students, which was greater than the 8,630 that we levied for. So that's a positive surprise. And also has been reason for us to kind of reconfigure the way we're looking at enrollment so that we can get closer and closer and be more accurate. We don't want to overburden the tax base by levying for more students than we're going to serve, but we also want to have enough money on hand through our levy process to serve the students that we do have. In doing that, we looked at 4 different calculation methods. All of them are based in the cohort survival method, which is basically taking your grade cohorts, moving them to the next year, and then adjusting for historical capture or loss at those transition times. The 5-year average method of looking at that produces a 1.0178 or 77 survival, which is probably the most conservative of the 4 different ones we look at. We look at 5-year, 5-year weighted, 3-year, and 3-year weighted. The past couple of years we've used 3-year weighted so that we could kind of avoid the COVID dip. But now that we're kind of getting past that, looking at a more 5-year is starting to make more sense, although I think it's a little bit more conservative than some of the other ones at this point. Were you to use that cohort survival method for last year's final enrollment, you'd get something like 8,750 or so students. When you apply a little bit of conservatism to that, we arrive at the 8,735 ADM for next school year. Here's just a graphical representation of how enrollment's doing in Edina. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we are at record highs in the school district. This is the most students that we have ever served in Edina. As you can see, since that 2021 COVID year, we've rebounded strongly. We're not only at pre-pandemic levels, we're actually further along than that. Some of that is due to the expansion at Countryside, but I think what we're noticing is that we've got very significant and robust enrollment at our secondary. We're retaining more of our middle school students. Typically, we'll promote a number of open enrollment spots, and we'll see that figure drop as the first week of school begins because parents and families might be shopping around for students. They might make a different choice and not let us know, and all of a sudden we're short a few students at middle school and high school. This summer, that has not been the case, and that was also not the case as much last summer, which is positive. And so kudos to those who are involved with that process for making sure that we've got all of our students in place. We also graduated a relatively low senior class this year of about 620. However, our freshman class this year is at 709 this year. And so we're going to continue to see larger and larger high school classes. We're at about 2,775 students at the high school this year, which is a little bit above the 2,620 that we aim for. We will lose some of those students to PSEO and other options throughout the year, but that our flagship continues to be in a very healthy state. We're also seeing pretty good growth in our virtual program, Edina Virtual Programming. We're at over 100 students now, whereas this time last year we're at about 74. One thing to note about enrollment, and I don't have it on this slide, is that our kindergarten classes continue to be something that we're monitoring. I budget for about 580, which I think is relatively low. I think it would be good if the district were closer to 590 or 600 at that level. We're at about 560 today in kindergarten. So the last 2 years, we've seen a little bit lower enrollment in kindergarten. I think some of that was a response to a couple of cohorts being over capacity 2 or 3 years ago. But there may be other factors, including just declining birth rates, both in Edina and the surrounding cities that are contributing to that. We'll hope to take a deeper dive into the reasons as to why that's occurring over the next several months. Next, we'll talk about the operating referendum, which is a very significant portion of the school district's revenue, just over 13%. As our public commenter remarked today, state funding does not keep up with inflation historically. We've finally gotten to a point in Minnesota where that now is tied to inflation. However, that gap has accrued over the previous 20 years. Voter-approved operating referendum authority is one way in which school districts are able to mitigate that lag. Our voters, as you know, last approved our operating referendum near the max in 2017. We're about $6 short. However, our referendum is tied to inflation, so we're going to see about 2.5% or so growth on that each year. I think 3 years ago, we saw very significant growth. As we exited the pandemic, we were closer to about a 9 to 12% increase. However, that's continuing to go back to normal. So we'll be in that 2 to 3% range absent any extraordinary events in the kind of macroeconomic environment. One other thing to note about the operating referendum is that it's subject to negative or positive adjustments. So when we do our levy in December, we're making a projection on what our enrollment will be. If we actually serve more students, then we'll see a positive adjustment 2 years from now because the levy cycle is always lagged by a year. If we serve fewer students, we'll, of course, receive a negative adjustment. The Department of Education's Consumer Price Index adjusted inflation figure is also an estimate at the time the levy is certified. So if that figure is greater than what the department and what the school board levies at, then we'll also see positive adjustments for that as well. Some of the adjustments that I believe I've calculated accurately are presented to you for fiscal year 25. We actually levied at $2,197. The actual authority is going to be closer to $2,205. So we'll see a positive adjustment there on both the per pupil formula and also for the enrollment. As I mentioned, we overperformed enrollment by about 70 ADM. For fiscal year 26, we levied last December 8,670 ADM. We're revising that closer to the 8,730 that I had mentioned. So we'll receive a positive adjustment on that. We'll also receive a positive adjustment on the per pupil amount. We levied at $2,261. We're actually going to receive $2,274. And the current estimated cap for next school year is $2,340.76. Of course, Edina's authority is just a little bit under that, so we'll be receiving $2,334.87. All in all, I think we'll receive new revenue on our operating referendum to operate next school year of just under $1.2 million. So that's going to go towards maintaining all of our collective bargaining enhancements, step movement, inflationary increases to supplies, software licenses, et cetera. The next major levy category that we'll quickly review is the local optional revenue, which at this point has actually become quite stagnant and boring. That's been in place at $724 for a number of years now, and like the state education formula has been lagging inflation since inception. This one has not been tied to inflation by legislative measures over the last couple of years, so it remains fixed at that $724, and the gap is now at about $250 per pupil. So we'd be closer to $950 or so dollars had that been tied to inflation, which means revenue growth or decline is purely tied to what your enrollment's doing. So we're lucky to have a little bit of growth in our enrollment, so we will see some additional revenue. We'll also see some positive adjustments because our enrollment has come in better than expected the last couple of years. Capital Projects Levy, also known as the Tech Levy, which is almost exclusively used to finance our technology staff, our technology devices, and all of the software, both instructional and operational throughout the district. This is a relatively simple voter-approved levy to understand. It's simply a tax rate approved by the voters multiplied by the district's net tax capacity, which means that this is the only levy category that is actually tied to the tax capacity of the school district. So as the properties in the district grow in value, that levy will grow in direct proportion. We're going to be just short of $9.5 million, so an additional $286,000 above the current year, which is about a 3.12% increase. This is levied on the tax capacity of 2024. You'll notice that the 3 years post-COVID, we were averaging increases of about 9.3%. So the robust property valuation growth, particularly in Hennepin County, really aided districts that have a capital projects levy in place. Kind of like the operating referendum revenue, we're going to get closer to normal with closer to 3% or so annually. In fact, the average over the last 10 years was about 3.36, so we're really close to that. Debt service is the next major category. This is a levy for principal and interest payments on outstanding general obligation bonds. That includes both voter-approved bonds, such as the large $125 million voter-approved bond of 2025, the smaller $7 million in 2021, as well as our long-term facilities maintenance program, which the school board approved in July, actually. So We are required to levy for 105% of the principal and interest payments. So if we have principal and interest payments of 100 million in a given year, we're required to actually ask the taxpayers to give us 105 million, and then in the subsequent year, we'll give back that 5 million and then levy for another 5% on top of the next year's. So there's kind of a revolving cycle of giving money back to the taxpayers and taking money, giving them a refund and taking more from them. Over time, that's going to adjust to zero if and when we extinguish all of our debt. That's likely not going to happen with the way that we finance our construction projects. However, there's also the component of the timing of payments. We've structured our payments in such a way that our long-term facilities maintenance program really provides a stable tax rate for the residents. So in years where our pay-as-you-go portion, which goes to the general fund, which I'll talk about on the next page, is higher, we've timed it in such a way that the voter-approved payments on school building bonds, such as the 2015 bond, are lower. For next school year, we're actually seeing the inverse of that happen. We're paying more on that 2015 bond, which was, of course, refunded by the 2024A bond. And so we'll lower our pay-go levy as a result to keep that nice level tax rate for our taxpayers. Long-term facilities maintenance, so as mentioned, this can be split between pay-as-you-go. So if I think I'm going to spend $10 million next year, I'll ask the tax base for $10 million. And then bonded debt, so we'll have stable payments over the years, and that structure creates level taxes. We are one of the 28 school districts that have kind of uncapped authority. We're able to levy for exactly what we need on our property taxes. All other school districts, with the exception of indoor air quality projects and roofing projects now, which was a positive result of legislative action committees throughout the state for 2025, those districts are subject to $380 per pupil. And so we would not be able to do the level of deferred maintenance that we are in this district had we not had that uncapped authority. We're anticipating a planned increase to our bonded portion. However, we've mitigated that by dropping down the pay-as-you-go portion. Overall, we're going to see about a $3 million increase between both the debt service and the long-term facilities maintenance pay-as-you-go program. Finally, next steps. Again, I will provide a full breakdown, including calculations of all the different levy categories, percent increases for all those at our next Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, which is next week. That same report will be given to the full board at our September 23rd special meeting, at which time the administration will recommend approving the levy at the maximum allowed by state law. As shared earlier, I'm expecting that's going to be between 4 and 5%. I'll have an exact figure next week. Parcel-specific notices will be mailed by the Hennepin County in November. We'll then go through our Truth in Taxation hearing on December 8th, and we'll also seek final certification at the same meeting, which is allowable by state law. And then we'll begin collecting that first bit of tax in May of 2026 to finance about 35% of next school year's operations. Any questions?
Just a question about the September 30th deadline, if they haven't given you the report. So we're still obligated to meet the deadline even though we don't have the information. Is that my understanding of how the
Absolutely.
system actually works?
We are required to. I think the MD late this afternoon did make their first levy run. It's wildly inaccurate at this point, which is why I declined to share it. I do have a very good idea of where we're going to end up. Were we to, for some reason, not have numbers, the school district can simply say we're going to levy the maximum and find out what that is in December.
Okay.
Not ideal. I think we're going to avoid that situation. We'll have complete data for you next week, but great question.
Just to be clear, I'm not laughing at your answer. I'm laughing at the ridiculousness of a requirement that's provided, but you can't do anything until they actually give it to you. I'm just wanting to make sure that's on record. Thank you.
Thank you for the very detailed report. And while we're talking about being on record, I think I wanted to make sure that, so in November, when people get these reports, lately there's been a little bit of a shock that goes nationally. We've seen property taxes going up. And I just wanted people in the community to know how seriously the district takes our role and how appreciative we are of how supportive our taxpayers have been to our school district. It really allows us to do the work that we do every day. And so I wanted people to recognize how seriously we take our job of being fiscally responsible with the money that the taxpayers do give us. And we are only one district in the state out of 3 in the district that there's one of 3, right?
3 of about 330.
Oh, in the country, right?
One of about 93 in the country.
Okay, even better than I thought. That has a AAA bond rating. And part of that is because of how seriously we take that. And so I just want to state that because I do know that when those reports come to houses in November, there can be some shock. And we have worked really hard to make sure, like you talked in your report, that we've kept that stable for taxpayers. And yeah, so I just wanted to make sure we were mentioning that.
If I could just add on to that, I really appreciate you bringing that up. It's not we don't simply receive the reports from the department and say, okay, that's what we're levying. We do kind of dive into the details and make sure that we're manipulating our levy as much as we can to both satisfy our requirements as a district so that we have enough money to operate, but to also, again, keep that tax rate as low as possible.
Great. We view them as partners in this work, so thank you for that. All right. Thank you, Director Woodard. And next, we have a report on the summer programming from our Community Ed and Strategic Partnership Department. And I welcome up Dr. Anne Marie Leland, Director of Community Ed and Strategic Partnership, and Dr. Cheryl Gunnis, Community Engagement and Purpose Learning Supervisor. Welcome.
Hello, Chair Gabler, directors, and Superintendent Bittman. I have the pleasure with Dr. Gunnis right here to talk about our summer 2025 wonderful programs that we had. We delivered so many programs and services this summer. One of the things I wanted to go back to in terms of the Excellence in Action item was one of the things that I got to do to welcome our school year staff in this fall was just to shake hands and everything, say hi to everybody, but it was because Dr. Gunnis had put on such fantastic professional development for that team, for our Kids Club, our enrichment team, and I just want to publicly thank her for doing that. So with that, 2025, it was a hit. Oh, yeah, Mert was right. There we go. We had quite an impact on the community and the students that we served. I'll just start by saying Early Learning and Family Center, along with all of the enrichment camps that were provided by some of our teachers and team members. We also had Ready, Set, K, which is a partnership with Hopkins, and my colleague, Dr. Franny Bacour, and I and Hopkins were, I'm sorry, I just got a message from Pedston. We're so pleased to welcome 32 students from both of our communities who really had maybe a little bit of preschool, pre-K experience or no pre-K experience, but in this space of 3 weeks, we extended it by 1 week from last year. Served lunch, all sorts of things, and really surrounded these kids with love and experienced teachers that really guided and engaged our children in that space. That was fun. Okay, Kids Club, 9 weeks, big programming. I got to be on site a lot this summer. It was so fun. 3 sites, 9 weeks, 1,078 students, grades K through 6, over 220,000 hours of engagement. And just loved having them go to pools and zoos and theater and all sorts of places. And as you can see from last year to this year, we certainly ticked up in terms of our enrollment. So we increased by quite a bit. And those quotes are from parents. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gunnis.
So Kids Club, all day, every day, Monday through Friday. Our enrichment camps are week-long camps that are usually either the morning or the afternoon. I would say some of the highlights of these enrichment camps were we had some visiting artists come, and many of them visited our community wood shop. So some of the first camps to fill were furniture making for your pet and birdhouse making, make your own guitar. And so it was really exciting to see so many middle schoolers in the wood shop. Are we actually doing that, or is Betsy?
Yep, there we go, I don't know.
So you will see an interesting thing about our enrichment camps is, you talked a lot about the space available. We are really limited by the space that's available. Like, we can't grow because we don't have the space. The demand is there, but we don't have the space to grow.
And just a key point, even though we were talking about Kids Club earlier, you said it was at 3 sites Kids Club was offered, right? Can you explain why it's only at 3 sites?
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, Director Bergman, we are at 3 sites because the other 3 elementary schools were offline due to construction and other projects.
And that is pretty typical every year.
It is, yes. We could probably have all 6 open and full.
We work really hard to make sure that all students are able to access these experiences, and so this year we served over 194 youth. Through our partnerships with Edina Give and Go and the Southdale YMCA and a community ed funding, you can see that we do have steady growth in this area, and it's coordinated through Krista Phillips and our Edina Resource Center. Targeted Services is an invitation-only program that combines social-emotional learning, direct instruction, reading and math, and also project-based learning. We had this program is also growing. We added an additional week this year. We increased the number of students by about 26% who actually accepted our invitation and attended. We had 18 teachers who all Edina teachers who represented every single elementary school. We did a field trip for the first time this year, and we also really helped with the transitions and regulations because we had an on-site mini kids club site this year, so students didn't have to get on buses and ride back and forth, and that was a huge benefit to the program. And we saw so much joy, and many students were really sad when it was over, and a lot of parents wanted to know if we could add 3 more weeks. But it was really exciting to be feeling like we're really making a difference for a lot of students. Volunteers are also a huge part of our program. We had over 142 high school volunteers who are helping with the Early Learning Center, enrichment programs, Kids Club. This year we also added or increased our middle school volunteer options with helping with our Unified camps and also with a partnership with the University of Minnesota 4-H program. And that almost 7,000 hours of volunteer service, when calculated at the national volunteer rate, is over $241,000 contributed back into our program. Again, this continues to grow, and we certainly couldn't run any of our programs that we're running without the volunteers. We feel like the volunteering is a part of leadership and career exploration. But we also take really seriously our opportunity in community education to hire the students who have been part of our Kids Club program and our enrichment programs. This year we had 24 high school students hired, both in summer enrichment and Kids Club.
And thank you for that. And we have another opportunity through the Department of Labor and Industry to get a youth skills training grant. Again, it's another 2-year grant that will feature students having career exploration and opportunity in terms of internships in not only IT, but also we've added healthcare this year.
So as you saw, as we were going along, we added up all the hours of engagement, and I just was trying to think of a way to provide some context for that. So 349,000 hours of engagement, if you divide it by the number of hours in a year, and I'm talking about 24 hours in a day, we delivered almost 40 years of experiences for students here in Edina Public Schools, which is now proudly emblazoned on our
Yes.
walls in community ed.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yes, facilities. Thank you, facilities. Thank you, custodians. Oh, my goodness. The logistics, the cleaning, the swapping out of rooms, just making sure that the rooms that we did have available to us were cleaned in rotation, but facilities, 1,162 facility permits were approved. So just this summer, I just still can't believe that. 122 unique users, and one of them is a resident sewing expert there. There you go.
And just to end, I wanted to say that it's not just about the numbers for us, but about how we're doing the work. And so we are really focusing all of our professional development and training, working with Dr. Bakir on making sure that we're aligned with what's happening in the school days with cultural proficiency, multi-tiered systems support, making sure that all students, when they come, they're having quality experiences and they're feeling like they really belong and can be who they're meant to be. So,
And I believe that is the end of our presentation. I was going to say show. But one of the things I wanted to add was Dr. Gunnis also helped us deliver, I mean, we didn't, but through your work of putting together for Give and Go, the extra week of camps. That was extraordinary. So we delivered 10 weeks of enrichment, but then there was that 11th week, where families are like, what am I going to do? Well, we had quite an opportunity with that. And our facilities, again, were full. So with that, any questions?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to commend your team. Whoever touches the summer programming, from the custodians to the people that flag people in and out of the parking lot. And truly to you, I didn't realize it was Dr. Gunnis now, Dr. Gunnis.
Well, she has her PhD in English literature. I believe
That's
it was Jane
right.
Austen.
That's right.
That was her inspiration.
You guys are truly living out the vision and mission of our school district when we talk about each and every student. And it just warms my heart. And I know you and I have worked over the years about making our summer programming more inclusive, and to see the growth over the years, and to hear you talk about having kids be their genuine selves, to the programming with Give and Go. It is exceptional work, and it is unique, and there's not a lot of districts, not just in our state, but in our country, that put this much care to make sure all students can have access to something that really sparks them. And just thank you. It's really outstanding. So
Thank you so much. We feel the same way. We're back here year after year doing this, so we love it so much.
That was really well said, and I wanted to say that too, because it had the growth under Cheryl. I know you have put a lot of care into this, and Anne Marie, you too. Community Ed is a shining star, and I have to think that some of the enrollment increases we see are because of people having that experience in Edina Public Schools in the summer and saying, I want in on that. And so thank you for those numbers continue to grow, and the leadership opportunities you've embedded in this are just outstanding. The middle school volunteers, the high school volunteers, how you've brought that program to life is just amazing. And I page through the catalog and I'm like, what did you come up with this time? And like I saw that for the fall, you have multi-generational classes, which I think are so cool. I've got to find myself like a grandchild or something, because my kids won't come with me to do wood shop. Or there's like a quilting one. I'm like, this is so cool. So thank you for the programming that your team is offering. And please pass along our gratitude to everybody that had a hand in this. So
We do. We have an amazing team.
Thank you.
And actually, real quick, although I did want to say one more thing, and I'm glad that you emphasized the point about space. Again, when we hear the city of Edina coming to us and saying they want to do a mitigation program, we have this limited space, so on and so on. These are the types of things that where do we want to go? Because we do have demand, right, from our community. and from our parents and from our students for the types of programming that we're already doing. And we can't be all things to all people, but there's a constant strategic imperative for us to constantly look at what else can we do for the demand that people have for what we do, because what we do is so good, is so excellent, is so meaningful to each and every, and that we're never satisfied. Because I think about where my kids were doing this to where it is today. We're proud of what we do, and we have amazing people doing amazing work, but we're never satisfied that we've hit the apex. That we're always constantly figuring out where else we want to, because the world doesn't stop. It constantly changes, and we try to adapt and change with that too. So they're all interrelated. So I just wanted to point out that I got that emphasis about the space, and at the same time, we have certain capacities, which is a word we don't like to use. There's only so much capacity that we can generate, not just from the buildings and not just in the space, but of the people. I do want to take this really quick moment, especially for Mert and your team, what our custodian staff has had to handle with losses that they've personally suffered from staff who are no longer with us, and still keeping the job going. And when you mentioned earlier about cleaning every nook and cranny of our campuses, it showed. Like when I was at kickoff at the activity center at the high school, I've never seen that basketball floor look so clean. I mean, it was unbelievable. So all of these things are interrelated to one another. And what I guess the message is for the community is we are pushing our capacity all the time. And it's amazing that we're able to do what we do and not have things break, because we're constantly taxing that ability. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here this evening. All right, our last item up for discussion this evening is policy review, and I will turn it over to Director Allenberg, Chair of the Policy Committee.
Thank you, Chair Gabler. I almost said Chair Allenberg. I'm like, that's me. I'd like to invite up Assistant Superintendent Swenson. We're going to review two different sets of policies. Our policy 208 allows us to have policies go through rapid review, which means that we review them and vote on them in the same night. So we have a second section of policies in action, but our first set of policies are for discussion. We have policy 208, 516, 516.5, 524, and then I requested that we move 713 to discussion, just to make sure that we were honoring our policy for rapid review. And our first policy for discussion is policy 208, the development, adoption, and implementation of policies. And the change to this is the policy committee is making the recommendation that we review policy, the technology policy, biannually as opposed to every year, because the rationale is that there's so many changes in technology. If there's something urgent, we will bring that through, or if there's a statute change, we will bring that. But reviewing it for no purpose other than just reviewing it, that could be an every other year thing. So that was a recommendation, which is the only change to this policy.
I guess my only question is that given the regular review annually for no other reason other than to review it, how many changes have actually been happening on an annual basis to that policy, if any?
I can answer for this year. There are no substantive changes for this school year, or for this round. Last year, if I remember correctly, this was right when I started, so forgive me if I'm not 100% on, but I believe that there was something that we added in that would accommodate the use of our use of AI.
And we had cell phones.
Yeah,
And cell phone,
this
thank
is
you.
one where we actually have had it reviewed every year, only because of the state cell phone discussion. So this one has had a lot of
Yeah.
hands on it lately.
But what I meant is that was driven by legislative action or whatever, so rather than it coming specifically from a specific desire at the policy committee and administration to do something with that.
Correct, and most of our policies that are scheduled to be reviewed annually have to do with harassment, discrimination. There are very few policies other than, I believe, this one. This is sort of an anomaly where it's reviewed annually, and it does not fall in that category of really HR-driven legal things that we need to look at on an annual basis to ensure that we are up to date with statute.
Great, thank you very much.
Does anyone have questions or, okay. The next one, we're going to, they really need to be looked at together, but first I'm gonna start with 516.5. And are you reviewing this as well? Oh, that's right.
Director Remsing.
I have Director Remsing. Director Remsing will do a better job of explaining this than I will. So I will let you review the recommendation behind why this is coming to us and the recommended change to 516.5 and 516.
Okay, so 516 is our student medication policy, and what the changes will allow for is for students to self-carry opioid antagonist treatments for their own use or to be used on others as permitted by Minnesota state law. It also talks about how epinephrine is now available through a nasal spray where it used to just be available through an injection. And so by calling it, they end up calling it, oh shoot, they have a delivery system. It will encompass the nasal spray as well as the injection. And then also the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Health will provide districts their standing orders so that we can distribute and administer under state law. And so that makes it just really efficient for school districts. We don't have to all go seeking our own medical orders.
And so as you recall, we discussed this at our work session, and just the community knows what this was discussed prior to tonight. And as Director Remsing mentioned, this change in policy would allow opiate antagonists to be delivered from high school students and held harmless. And if you could maybe speak to, or maybe a board member that had attendance on the testimony about the rationale behind this change in state law, I think it would be nice for the community to understand a little bit of that.
So one of the pieces about opioid abuse is that typically people who are using it have addiction issues, and that is something that carries just something that people often will not want to go to your school nurse and say, hey, I'm abusing opioids, I'm afraid that I might overdose. And so that is something that is usually held in secrecy by people who are using, and with that secrecy it becomes life-threatening. And so while we hope that none of our students are using opioids, and we want to help anyone that has an addiction, we know that we also don't want anyone to die because they are unable to carry this life-saving treatment. One of the pieces about this life-saving treatment is that people who use it, it's harmless. It isn't going to cause any negative side effects that would damage anyone's health for using it. It really is just something that can save your life if you need it. It's also easy to administer, and it's widely available through many nonprofit organizations that are really just trying to get this life-saving treatment to people who would need it.
Thank you very much. That was helpful. And so the tandem policies 516.5 and 516 allow for students to carry it, and then allow for students to carry it without permission from a school nurse. And that being said, I don't know if you have further explanation or if there are comments or questions.
I don't have any further comments. I think you summarized it perfectly.
Okay, thank you.
I think I just wanted to reiterate something that we talked about in our last meeting about this, is that my one question was about the liability that under the state legislative statutes that were done to enable this to happen, that there isn't any increased liability or liability not only to the school district but also to the individual who might administer this life-saving treatment for that, making that happen. That was one of my concerns, to make sure that we understood that. And I got confirmation, if you can confirm, that yes, no, there is no liability to the district for enabling this to happen.
That's accurate.
Great, thank you.
Well, and then if someone were wondering, well, why don't just the nurses carry it? The time period of going from where maybe an incident happens to go find the nurse and then come back, could turn out to be fatal, whereas if a kid is right there and can make it work, it's the difference. So it really makes a lot of sense in that regard.
Thank you, Director Mann and Director Birdman. Are there any other questions or comments? Director Huvie?
I would like, it would also be true that you don't need to be a regular user of a narcotic to have benefit from this, because there are things out there, fentanyl, for example, that could end up in you may take it accidentally, and this could save your life as well.
That's accurate.
Thank you very much. And so the last thing that I wanted to let the community know is that one of the points that was brought up in the work session was we're discussing this tonight. It doesn't go to action, but the one thing that the board brought up was they were in favor of this change, and we're tasking the administration with making sure that it was clearly communicated to individuals at the high school and students what this change was, and any other stakeholders. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that piece. So, okay, that's 516, 516.5. So I believe Assistant Superintendent Swenson is up for 524 for tech. Did we just do electronic technologies acceptable use? No problem. You basically did in 208, so
Yes.
if
So-
you want to go over the change in 524.
For 524, there are no substantive changes. That is the update.
But the change doesn't, basically plagiarism used to specify for the internet, and now it broadens it to technology given AI. So that's the change. Any questions? Okay. And then Director Woodard, we're going to talk about policy 713, student transportation. I'm sorry, I try usually to put you guys in order so you're not going up and down, but I did not do a good job tonight with that. I apologize.
Good evening, Chair Allenberg. Policy 713, which I believe is the combination of MSBA policies 707 and 709, was last revised, I believe, in the fall of 2023. Legislative session kind of removed some of the timing deadlines which were specified by grade level in the statute. Those were removed. Some of the language was also updated, but no substantive changes.
Director Gabler?
I had a couple of questions on this, and this one's a long one, so forgive me if I ask a question that you're like, oh, actually, that shows up later. First of all, let me find it. There was some parts under section 3A, student training. I think you just talked about it here where we've removed, like in 2 and 3 where it says students in kindergarten through grade 6. That's what you're talking about when you said that the legislature has removed some of that language. Okay, but the blue language is what MSBA is recommending?
Yeah, just general by the 6th week of school, grades kindergarten through 10.
And then my other.
Chair Gabler, if you see, so what we did is the A1, it says we basically moved all of that different verbiage up to the sentence that says by the 6th week of school, the district will provide students in K through grade 3, which is the different audiences that were in number 2 and number 3. And number 4, we made it into like one sentence, basically saying all these different audiences need to have this by the 6th week of school.
Okay.
So
Yep,
that's what I wanted to actually explain, because it looks like we took out.
Right, that's what my question was. I was like, wait a second. Okay, thank you for that clarity. I appreciate that. And then I think my only other question, because you know how fond I am of our bus drivers. They do such a great job. On section 4, where it's talking about students with disabilities, do those guidelines apply to our students who are being transported by our third-party vendors?
All the policies should govern all the students that are being transported, so yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
May I just ask an operational question? Because I was completely unaware until I read this policy, because I hadn't paid attention to it before, unfortunately. The student training, when does that actually occur? Like, it happens on the bus, happens in the classroom? Like, I'm unaware that any of my students actually went through that because it didn't happen to the parents. I'm just curious when that actually occurs. In the classroom, like homeroom classroom? Oh, they run a drill. Oh, okay.
Yep. So in my time in the district, as Assistant Superintendent Swenson mentioned, in the classroom, however, a member of our transportation department who kind of functions as the safety coordinator does partner with the billing principal and teachers to update any curriculum that goes with that.
Lovely.
And so.
Seriously, I was just ignorant to that, so thank you.
Any other comments on policy 713? Thank you, Director Woodard. Our next set of policies are up for rapid review, and so they have either hardly any change or a statutory update. Since we have so many of them, do you want me to run through them, or should I presume people have read through them?
I think because they're up for action, I have to have a motion first.
Oh, that's right. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good.
I will turn it over to Chair Gabler.
I'll turn it right back in just a second. So we are moving on to the action items. So do I have a motion to approve policies 418, 501, 515, and 802?
So moved.
Second.
Mann and then Allenberg. Policy Chair Allenberg, turn it over to you to talk about the policies.
So these policies are up for rapid review. They either have statutory changes or not much of a change at all. Since this is the first time, I already changed my mind what should happen in that limited time period. Since this is the first time the board members are seeing it, we should probably walk through what the changes are before you vote on them. So the first one is policy 418, alcohol and drug-free workplace and school environment. And we have Director Saylor, the head of HR. Is it director? No, it's not. Executive Director Saylor. If you wouldn't mind coming up and explaining the addition to this policy, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening. So the policy 418, which is our alcohol and drug-free workplace and school environment, there's only one change that's being recommended, and it comes directly from the Minnesota School Boards Association's recommendation. And it's an update to include their proposed redlined language found in Section 4, Paragraph D. Minnesota law was amended to require both employers and schools to provide a 14-day written notice to an employee or a student when the employer believes its inaction would be a violation of federal law. If you look at Section 4, Paragraph D, what isn't, the only change is that in addition to a district not being able to refuse to enroll or employ a person enrolled in the Minnesota Patient Registry Program, cannabis program, it also now, that same prohibition is for a tribal medical cannabis program. And if the district feels like doing so may result in a violation under federal law, because of course under federal law, our state law allows cannabis in a different way than our federal laws do in our country, then the district is required to provide a written notice to the patient, which would be a student or a employee, at least 14 days before it would take any action against that patient. In other words, stating that the school district may lose federal funds if it allowed or enrolled a student or an employee, employed an employee who was a part of the Minnesota Patient Registry Program or tribal medical cannabis program. So it's simply a procedural change that provides that this written notice must be provided, what the time period is, and then provides the statutory information. So this is why we've recommended the language additions simply go through the rapid board approval process.
May I just ask what the practical effect of this is in terms of, so federal law states X, state law is saying, yeah, but you can't really do this, so on and so forth. Yes, you're trying to protect the school district from federal cuts or whatever it might be. But the impact is that in one of these patient registry programs or cannabis programs, they're in like is that a court-ordered program that like is a deviation program? I mean, I don't even know what those are. It's like,
No, they're medical programs.
oh, so someone's like under medical cannabis.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Correct. And so as a reminder for employees, even if you're in a medical cannabis program, you cannot be impaired in the workplace.
Right.
And so that does not change
Got it.
regardless.
And that was actually covered, I believe, was it last year? I think I was on the policy committee when we talked about that particular
Yes, we
issue
did.
and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yes, we did. So this is really just nothing more than this written notice is now
Got it.
required.
Thank
And-
you.
But in answer to your question, Director Bergman, I think that it is really unlikely that we will ever be providing this notice.
Any other questions or comments? We're going to move on to policy 501, which is our school weapons policy. And Assistant Superintendent Swenson is up here. And the addition to this policy is in section 7. And it requires an after-action review report. It's a change in state law, and that's the only change to this policy. Questions about this one? Okay. Sorry. Do you want to say something just for?
It's the Minnesota Fusion Center.
I just asked him about that because I was like, is that right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Would you like me to stay for 515?
Absolutely. Why don't you do 515?
So policy 515, the key changes are basically enhanced parent privacy protection. In 7A3 treats parent contact information as private data, now regardless of whether it was designated as directory information before or not. And then in 6B23, it allows sharing of student contact and directory information with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development for special ed students, post-secondary transition planning and services. And then for federal reporting requirements in 7A4, it clarifies that we can share that information with the Department of Education for federal reporting purposes. The other changes are technical in nature, and cross-references have just been updated.
Director Birdman?
I just want to make sure I understand the implication under section 7A3. A parent's personal contact information should be treated as private data on individuals regardless of whether that contact information was previously designated as or treated as directory information under the section or state law. Practically, again, is it because, unless there's a release provided by the parent to share that information, or no matter what the parent allows or doesn't allow, we have to treat it as private information?
That's a really good question. By policy, we have to treat it as private. I had not thought about a parent giving us release of that information. I would assume that that's something
yeah.
we could that we'd be able to work out with the family.
Director Birdman, it's a really good question. So typically we consider that as private data, but if the parent signs a release from, say, another organization, a medical doctor, things like that, then when we release it. But as a matter of note, it would require their release.
So help me understand from a practicality standpoint. I know when I was liaising with the high school PTO, and there was issues about wanting to have directory information in order to promote the PTO's actions, or it could be the ed fund or whatever it might be, that the district certainly cannot provide that information without a release and so on and so forth. I just wanted to make sure that with this addition, it doesn't prevent a release from the parent to be able to provide. We just can't release that information because it's private until such time as a release is given.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And PTOs, these actually are going directly to parents because of some of this. So it shouldn't be a change actually in practice.
I didn't think it was. I know
Yep.
it's just an issue
Yes,
that's
yeah.
related to where we have the communal elements of what we're doing within a particular building and so on and so forth, that this particular element, which I don't know if this was the exact design that was meant to, this is an all-encompassing sort of private data classification. This is what challenges some of our organizations who work closely with us, where we as the district cannot provide that information. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that? And the last but not least is policy 802. And Director Woodard, I think I can handle this one. So you don't have to get up. But it adds in there that we're able to donate. It specifies where we can donate and get rid of old textbooks and stuff, and says that we could donate to a charity, 501(c)(3). Okay, that's all for our quick review.
All right, thank you. We will now vote to approve policies 418, 501, 515, and 802. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Policy 418, 501, 515, 80, and 802 are approved. Board members, do you have any leadership or committee updates?
I just have one quick.
Yes.
We started the year off for the LIC, so we welcomed 16 student members and community members to the LIC for this year. So we're excited for that, and we're going to be working on 2 different groups, one with platform development and one with legislative outreach. And so we look forward to presenting to the board later on this fall.
Great, thank you. Dr. Bittman, do you have any updates you'd like to share?
2 very quick ones. One, to compliment Dr. Aram and Director Birdman for their work, Director, for their work on the LAC. It was a great evening. The kids were really excited, and it was so fun to be able to share some information. We do have confirmation from representatives from MASA, AMSD, MSBA, and AASA, as well as it's looking good for the governor's office to have a representative in meeting with our kids throughout this year as well. So we're excited about that. Our next guest will be in October, and it'll be Scott Kronquist from AMSD.
There's a lot of A's in there.
I did want to also mention, just to bring us back to the beginning, before we let everybody go home in the audience, I know parking will be hard to get out, just to bring us back for school board recognition. We really do appreciate the work that you're doing each and every day, and we know that it's tireless, and we know that you don't do it for the money. So thank you for being here to support us, to support our kids, and support our families, because the bottom line is we couldn't do it without you. So thanks for what you do.
Thank you, Dr. Bittman. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Mann and then Aram. We will vote to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is passed, and the September 8th, 2025 board meeting has adjourned.